to another episode of Lie, Cheat, and Steal, the podcast about liars, frauds, thieves, and bullshitters. I'm your host, Pat Royce. Just to let you guys know, we drop 2 episodes every month on our free feed there for you. And if you want to check us out on our socials, we're on everything, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at Lie, Cheat, Steal Podcast. So go and check that out. If you like what you hear and you want some more content, we do 2 more episodes every month on our Patreon. And that's patreon.com/lie, cheat, and steal. Just like, we usually breeze through that. Just a little word up top. If you're listening to the show and you like it, and you haven't followed us on one or more of those platforms, that's really the best way to help the show out. We've just seen a big spike over on our YouTube, and it's kind of fun, and I like refreshing the screen and watching the numbers go up. So help your boy out. Other than that, what am I going to do? Work at work? No, I want to check my phone and see numbers rise. So that being out of the way, I am here, as always, with my co-host, Kath Barbadoro. Kath, how you doing?
Hi, Pat. I'm okay. I work at a college, as some of our listeners might know, so I'm finally at the end of like a really crazy, busy time period because everybody graduated. They're graduating tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
And now, so I work in the summer, but it's chill.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
real
yeah.
chill in the summer. Like, employers listening to this, I got plenty of stuff to do. Please don't fire me. But it is it's pretty chill. It's pretty chill when the students are gone. So I'm looking forward to a little less stress. We had to put this recording off like 3 times because I was too fucking busy and like going crazy with all these things I had to run at work. But I'm through it. I'm out of the woods. I had like my sort of last little event today. And it was fun. It was just like a happy hour for my boss. So it was very easy.
Nice.
And now I'm free. Now I'm done. How are you, Pat?
I'm good. I just out at the new job, and it is, boy, I may have said this in the last one, and I know sometimes we talk about weather that might seem cliche, but Texas is, it's at that part where it's like the little rainy season we get is done, and today we got that first little peak of like, hey bro, we're cooking up. Like, when things are heating up, get ready, dude.
A little preview of what the next 4 months is.
Yeah.
Rough.
Yeah,
rough
we have like little umbrellas and tents outside at work that we have to like, and we just drink a lot of water, but it's cool. I don't know. I'm really liking the job. We're just installing huge racks of pipes in the ground. It's the most useful thing I've done in over a decade. I haven't done anything like with this like net constructive value like pretty much ever. So that's pretty
literally
cool.
Constructive. Like,
literally constructive.
You go to work and you leave work and there's stuff there that you did at work.
Man, yeah, I tell you, it beats the hell out of sales when you would just be like, hey, great job, good job. Tomorrow you're going to have to double it or things are going to get tense around here.
Right. Yeah.
But
cool. I'm glad you're liking it, even though, keep drinking water, man.
Yeah.
Texas summer is rough.
It is. So I got a segue for us here.
Okay.
I just spoke about my job. And some people lately in the news have been also speaking about their jobs, and things haven't been going very well for them. So I wanted to talk today about Boeing. The Boeing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot. I want to set a few expectations about this episode because there's a lot of moving parts with this whole Boeing thing. Yeah, some of them are moving right off the fucking wing of the plane. One of those moving parts blew open on an Air Alaska flight. That's how many moving parts there are.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah,
moving parts. Parts that shouldn't move are
parts that shouldn't be moving
all over the place.
And parts that should move, not moving. It's real. It's a real upside down world over there at Boeing. But here's what I want to. So, as anybody who's paying attention to the news, Boeing is involved in a very large scandal, and taking it involves 2 people stepping forward as whistleblowers to speak out about unsafe practices in the company, and 2 of those people have met their untimely demise under circumstances which some have labeled as suspicious.
Sure.
That I would be remiss to not answer that. So we're going to talk about that. That's going to come up. But what led us here that I think some people aren't as necessarily well versed on is a scam, a tried and true consumer big business scam. So
I am very interested to hear about this because I months ago booked tickets I'm going to Mexico in October, and I booked tickets months ago, and the cheapest tickets were on the Boeing Air Max. I
Yeah.
think it's a Air 8, the Air Max 8.
737 Max A, yeah. Or
Yeah,
8, yeah,
yeah,
8,
yeah.
yeah.
It's on the 737 Max. And I was like, it was this winter. I think I booked them in like February. And I was like, surely they'll have figured out the Boeing stuff by then. Like that's sort of what I thought back in February. Turns out I might go down with the ship. Because
Yeah.
I'm not, this is the thing. I looked to see if I could change the tickets to a non 737 Max.
Yeah.
And I can't. I have to either fly with this airline or like cancel the tickets and buy way more expensive tickets. So no, I'm doing it.
You're great. You know what? Here's the thing. If you
Well,
have,
we'll see. Well, at the end of this episode, we'll see if I'm still gonna do
okay,
it. That's a good.
I like that. I like that. If you have ever flown in this country, you've probably flown on a 737 Max. It is globally one of the most common forms of transportation.
Yeah.
It's all like, I don't say industry standard because I think it's given a little too much credit, but it's pretty standard in the industry.
Sure,
a
that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
So, so of course, Boeing is an American aerospace corporation. It was founded 107 years ago in 1916 in Seattle by William Boeing.
Okay, this is like what, 4 years after flight?
4 years
Like,
after flight, very quick. So we're seeing a guy who is already rich. We'll get into that. He's already rich, and he saw these planes flying around. And he was like, "Boy, howdy, that looks like fun." And and he had the money to finance
and then he
his
was
interest.
like, I'm gonna start a company that makes this so not fun.
Yeah.
We're gonna take all of the fun out of this by starting an airline company. Great.
Yeah. Nothing says fun like third quarter profit like margins and shit. You know, like let's
Right.
just so.
When I like to have fun, I like to go to the airport.
Yeah.
That's what I like to do. And get on an airplane.
Get on an
Absolutely.
airplane, man. Yeah, like it's crazy how like we need to fly. Like everyone has to do it now. Like you can't. It's not just it's not just a fun thing you do. They're not serving dinner anymore. It's like you got to get from point A to point B.
It's like the horrible tunnel you have to go through to get to the light at the end, which is your vacation or your business trip or whatever.
Yeah, and it has ingrained the aerospace industry into our economy. And we see every time there's a problem with 9/11, COVID, saying like that's what tanks first is the airline industry. And of course, this is for a different episode. It seems like they institute cost recovery measures and then never get rid of them for a decade.
Yeah.
Baggage check fees, been paying them since 2001. And I don't think they need them anymore. But so yeah, the Boeing Company, founded 107 years ago in Seattle, Washington by William Boeing. Boeing was the son of an Austrian mother and a German father who immigrated to the United States in 1868. Boeing's father, Wilhelm Boeing, that's a spelling different, no E in that one, just
Boeing.
Just Boeing.
They were like, went through Ellis Island. They're like, this is finally our chance.
Yeah,
to
yeah.
Not be Boeing. They're like the one family that changed it on purpose and not just because someone was being racist.
Yeah. The guy was like, all right, that's Boing. He's like, nein, it is a Boeing. Das Boeing is nicht gut. Ist nicht gut. So Boeing's father, Wilhelm Boeing, began his career as a laborer, but went on to make a great fortune off the timber and mineral rights to some land that he owned in Minnesota. So out the gate, William Boeing, rich kid. He relocated to Washington, and he made his fortune in timber, much like his father. His timber company was founded at the cusp of a nationwide construction boom, and by 29 years old, he was an extremely wealthy man with a budding interest in boat design.
Okay.
So, yeah. In 1909, he traveled to Seattle to attend the Alaska Yukon Pacific Exposition, which is basically a World's Fair. And it was at this exposition that Boeing got his first glimpse of a flying machine. He was fascinated as some guy in a field with fake wings flying a bike.
I wonder who was like, we gotta stop calling it a flying machine. Like, who was the one who like changed the name, Who came up with aeroplane? It was like, that is much better branding. That is way stickier, way more streamlined. Yeah. Which is what you need in an airplane. So
isn't there a movie like
flying machine?
Yeah, isn't there a movie like those wacky men and their flying machines or something like that? Isn't it like a 1940s comedy?
Probably.
Yeah, it's out there.
I believe it.
Yeah. And then it also reminds me of that Mr. Show sketch where he's like, counterfeit money machine.
Singer?
Yeah, the benefit.
Yeah.
So he was fascinated. So a year later, in 1910, he's at one of the world's first air shows, the Dominguez Flying Meet in Los Angeles, California. This is very funny. Boeing was very excited to be there, and he asked every pilot in attendance if he could have a ride in one of their aeroplanes. And every one of them told him no. Like, that's because he wasn't like an adorable kid or a hot lady. He was just some dude. Hey, can you take me up? Hey, can you take me up?
Well, also, I feel like being that guy at that time is you're basically like the guys on the Titanic submersible. Like, it's that dangerous to just like take a guy up, you know?
Yeah, so he was asking everybody, and everybody told him no. And finally, one legendary French aviator by the name of Louis Paulin said, yeah, I'll give you one after the meet. So Boeing waited excitedly, only to find out that Louis had finished the meet and left without telling him.
Burn! Wow. He volunteered to like take the bullet so that the guy would stop asking all his friends.
Yeah, that's exactly what that was.
I'll tell him, I'll do it, and then I'll leave, and he'll leave you guys alone.
I will take you up on my plan. Yeah, just was fucking smoking his ninth cigarette of the hour. So that didn't stop William Boeing from flying, though. Soon he was taking flying lessons and even purchased his own plane. One of his test pilots damaged the plane and he was told by the manufacturer that replacement parts wouldn't be available for months. And this is where history takes a tragicomic stumble into what we're talking about today, because Boeing reportedly scoffed at this timeline and told his friend, Commander George Westervelt of the U.S. Navy, he said, we could build a better plane ourselves and build it faster. And,
that's the American ingenuity we have come to know and love on this show. I can do that myself, and I can do it better and faster.
I can do it better and faster.
And nothing bad will happen.
Yeah. Because the thing about better, faster, and cheap is that you don't have to sacrifice any one of them to get the other one. You can have all three.
You can have all of them, and
that is common knowledge.
We just did on What a Time to Be Alive this week. We did a whole deep dive on the Cybertruck Owners Forum, which is just a gold mine.
Oh, wow.
Talk about people building stuff, quote, better, faster, cheaper. Shit is flying off those cars as they were driving down the highway. Anyway, just, can't get it out of my head. We're great at that here, you know? Innovation. That's what we do.
Innovation.
Work fast, break things.
This is going to turn into... We've been covering a lot of stories of that are very similar to this. This is going to turn into corporate profits above everything and staying competitive in the market above everything. And as we know, it has had very tragic results. So the 737 is what we'll talk about next. Fast forward to the 1960s. Boeing is a gigantic global company that manufactures aircraft for commercial and defense applications. They are also involved in space travel, marine craft, agriculture, public transportation systems. They're literally one of the most successful companies in human history. The airline industry is a bit different than what it has become today. Airline companies have a need for smaller planes that can make shorter regional flights more financially viable. Commercial airliners at this point, in the 1960s, focused on international and transcontinental flights, and big planes like the Boeing 707 with its 4 engines cost too much to transport 50 to 60 people from New York to Chicago. So
interesting. Okay, so at this time, because of the costs, they would run regional flights with lower capacities.
Well, that was
I guess less people were probably taking them.
Well, that's what they needed. It was a source that I said it was like, imagine like an intercity bus versus an intracity coach. You know, it's like you can't drive. You can't drive the tour bus around Austin, but you can get a smaller like model of bus that gets people from down south up north, and that was what it was shifting towards.
I guess I'm just thinking that's like different because now it's like it's based on how many people want to go there because it's not as like they have the capability to build these things for cheap, and that's why they're falling apart. Anyway.
Okay,
so that's how it was in the 60s. That makes sense.
Yeah. So they tried. So Boeing was like, all right, we're gonna change the game. We're gonna get a smaller, thinner aircraft that only needs 2 engines. And it's gonna get us from, then you can take it. And this is also a wild time in flight. Is airports, like regional airports for companies that more or less dictated their own flights out of there. A good example of this, oddly enough, is in F is for Family, the Bill Burr Netflix cartoon. He works at Indian Airlines, and it's just like an airline that had its own airport, and that was like pretty common. Airlines would just have their own airports in the regions and stuff. So like a little snapshot of time back when that was what was getting the job done. That's not the model.
Yeah, so it was like that was like their territory. And
exactly.
Interesting. Okay, cool.
So they were like, people wanted just, smaller planes that could take smaller amounts of people on smaller flights. So they were like, all right, to save money, let's start using as many existing parts and designs that they could from their current fleet, which isn't a bad idea. It's like, hey, we're already making these wheels, we're already making these wings. So they took a
It's like when you make an extra cookie out of all the scraps from the cookie dough after you cut all the other cookies. That's what they're trying to do.
It's economic, it's frugal, exactly. So they got a fuselage similar to the 707 and a similar flight control system to the 727. So these models, however, had rear-mounted engines. You ever see those on the big planes where the engines are back up at the tail?
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah. So that's where they used to put these things. But that sacrificed cabin room, and they want to have a lot of room for people in the plane.
Sure.
So the 737 design went with mounted wing engines and shorter landing gear. And this actually changed, it allowed more passengers on board and more luggage to be stored underneath and made it easier to load and unload. It just was an all-around better way to build a plane for passenger flight.
Was this like the first plane that had the engines on the wing?
I don't think it was the first, but it was a newer option, essentially, because they still had still like prop planes and stuff in World War II with those things on there. But I guess for jetliners, they had been strictly in the back at this point, or primarily.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
So one thing about that engine placement, though, and this is wild. Like, I was listening to a podcast about Boeing's future because I've been kind of like submersing myself in it. And the guy who they were talking about what CEO they want to take over, and they were talking about somebody who can understand a long-term business model. And they were like in a huge industry like this where you're making gigantic flying machines. You're not making computers and laptops or whatever. You're making these huge pieces of machinery. They were like, this is something like you make a decision now and it's going to affect the company's profitability in 40 years. It's
right. Yeah.
And they're like, we want somebody that understands that. And the decisions they made the 737, and then later we'll see with the 737 MAX, those were like, they made these decisions, and I'm sure at the time it made sense. It was like, hey, do this, we'll get these together, and it'll work. And they just weren't. I guess they weren't anticipating the American capitalist culture to just completely explode the way it did, and none of their concerns to be addressed. Because I feel like Boeing's a huge company. I'm sure they're bad people all across the board throughout its entire history. But it feels like these were just a bunch of dudes who were like, hey, we can make a better airplane. And
started out well-intentioned.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the engine placement didn't necessarily vibe with the old 727 control systems, which were standard at the time, hydromechanical controls. So, guys, bear with us here while I try to explain to you and myself, if we're being honest, what hydromechanical controls are. So,
okay, I'm ready.
That means that all movements from the pilot's stick are transmitted via cables and pulleys to hydraulic valves, which power actuators and move the flaps and other control surfaces on the wings. So, that is, and we'll see. There's going to be an evolution in that later, and that is going to put Boeing on its back foot, and that leads for them to make some pretty rash decisions. But at this point, the stick directly controls through mechanical interfaces the things that are doing the plane.
It's a literal physical connection pulling on little doohickeys.
Exactly.
Yep.
And as I understand is what's bad about this, well, at the time it was just you couldn't avoid it because it's just how planes worked. But when atmospheric pressures or weather conditions or just wind hits those control surfaces, be they rudders or flaps, they move, and that movement is then corresponded back up to the stick.
Right, exactly. Yeah. You feel it in your controller.
Yeah, and then so it takes all. Yeah, you got to be on the ball, and they call it leads to situations called stick shakers, and so. From paper to air, the design of the 737 only took 3 years. The 737 made its maiden flight on April 9th, 1967, and not long after successful test flights, the Federal Aviation Administration issued a type certificate A16WE, giving a big thumbs up to the 737-100 for commercial flight.
Big gold star, great job.
Yeah, big gold star, good job all around.
A+ airplane.
Yeah, go home to your $35,000 house, and and just send your kids to college with the paycheck. And
yep.
So, Lufthansa was the first company to fly a commercial flight with the new jet on February 10th, 1968. The aircraft would go on to dominate the market for the next few decades, all while Boeing continued to tweak and improve the design. However, the rather archaic control system remained. The design was not without issues. One such would rear its ugly head in the 1990s. On March, here's another heads up, as a lot of this involves horrific plane crashes that kill hundreds of people.
Okay.
Trigger warning.
Sure.
We're getting into those, but I don't want to speak flippantly about it. It's just these could be entire episodes of some aviation podcast. Yeah.
I will tell one funny story before that as a palate cleanser.
Yeah. Clean us out so we can get into it.
You said Lufthansa, and it made me think. Every time I think about Lufthansa, I think about how one time I flew Lufthansa. I was coming back from Europe, and it's a German airline, and so the flight attendants are based in Germany. They speak English, but they have German accents. You know, if they're flying to the U.S., they'll speak English. And this woman was sitting next to me, and I got to imagine she just was like jet lagged and hadn't slept because of what I'm about to tell you. It's an American woman. We're getting food, and they're asking her what she wanted to eat, and they offered her a sandwich, and she kept saying, "What is a sandwich? A sandwich? What is a sandwich?" Like, could not think of that. Like, it was throwing her off so bad. She genuinely was like, "I don't know what this word is." Like, it was so crazy. Like, it was so weird to overhear someone not know what a sandwich was. I was like losing my mind. Anyway,
it's like,
that's what I think of every time. This was probably 20 years ago. And I just think about that woman not understanding a German guy saying sandwich.
Yeah, I'm sorry, sandwich? Wait, that doesn't make any sense at all.
What is a sandwich? Like, she couldn't. Could not figure it out. It was so funny.
Our friend Seth Cockfield has that Taco Bell joke where he asked for a nachos Del Grande, and the guy looked at the entire menu and goes, "We don't have that." It's like, that means he crossed over nachos Bel Grande and went, "No, that's different."
That's different.
I was on a Lufthansa flight coming back to the States from Germany, and I remember I took a nap. I was real young. This was like probably in the late 80s or early 90s at the very latest. I fell asleep. I woke up. My mom wasn't sitting next to me. I went to go look for her, and she was in the back by the bathroom smoking cigarettes with two flight attendants and some other lady.
Hell yeah. Back in the day. I don't have any memories of when you could smoke on planes, but what a time that must have been.
Yeah, my mom was back there, her Marlboro Light 100s, just having a good old time.
Fuck yeah. Okay, now into the plane crash.
Now into the plane crash, yes. Also, this is the first cluster of plane crash stories. There's two.
Okay.
There's two clusters. Okay. So this is the first one. On March 3rd, 1991, United Airlines Flight 585.
Okay, but actually, hold on. Before we go into that, so this airplane started in the late 60s.
Yes.
This came out, and they gave it the certification. Then in the 90s, they started having problems?
They started having problems where the steering system was starting to just become indicative that it was going to be an issue, because when they moved those engines back, the steering system wasn't made for them. So it would give it would create what they would call nose down events. Which sounds like I swear it's part of the George Carlin flying thing. Nose down event.
Right.
Sounds like we're crashing into the fucking ground.
Yeah. It's like, okay, well, I definitely don't want whatever that is.
Yeah.
Okay, so starting in the early 90s.
March 3rd, 1991. That was, we might have been on this flight. This might have been where my mom was smoking at. But March 3rd, 1991, United Airlines Flight 585, a Boeing 737-200, would experience a sudden right-hand nose pitch down whilst attempting to land in Colorado Springs. The resulting crash killed all 25 on board. What was perplexing to investigators was that the captain of the 585 operated a strict and conservative cockpit, strongly adhering to rules and procedures. A second remarkably
pro-family values.
Yeah.
No gay people allowed in that cockpit.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, he voted for Dan Quayle.
Didn't pay any taxes. Yeah.
So a second remarkably similar event happened on September 8th, 1994, when U.S. Air Flight 427, a larger Boeing 737-300, crashed near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This time it was a nose-down left turn. The pilots managed to wrestle the plane level only for it to turn a second time. Sadly, the aircraft and all 132 aboard were lost. There was a common theory regarding the 1991 crash that an uncommanded rudder movement was the cause, but sadly the wreckage was too mangled to find the defect. The NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Bureau, would finally get a break when they'd finally catch a break when there was a third plane crash. They're like, oh, thank Christ.
Ooh, more data. Yeah.
That's like a serial killer investigation where that's got to be like, you're like, man, I don't want him to kill again. Don't get me wrong, but fuck, I hope he kills again.
I'd like another crack at this.
Yeah. So June 9th, 1996, just mere weeks away from the theatrical release of Space Jam. We're a flight briefly experienced. So it was the East Wind Airlines flight 517. They briefly experienced an unexpected rudder command. Thankfully, the plane landed safely. The crew and passengers survived. The NTSB were able to gather valuable information from the aircraft and crew, resulting in a preliminary conclusion of a faulty rudder and its dual servo valve. Remember I told you it was little valves and everything that they would send?
Yep.
So this could jam and turn the rudder in the opposite direction of the pilot's input. Needless to say, the event would confuse flight crews with deadly results. So Boeing and the NTSB would test multiple units, confirming the fault and ordering Boeing to completely replace all units by 2002. They were actually able to take care of this.
I get why, but it's kind of crazy where it's like, yeah, this like thing that kills all people on board if it happens. We'll give you 10 years to fix it. That's wild. That is wild stuff. I mean, I guess it was more like 5 at that point, but I don't know. Just I get it. They have a huge fleet and like and like as you've said, like during like COVID and stuff, like if flights aren't flying, like the world does kind of shut down.
Yeah.
Like it's and especially back then, pre the kind of internet connectivity that we have now, like that does like grind the economy to a halt. You know? So like it's just wild to think about. It's like, we'll give you 5 years to stop that fatal error from happening.
Man, if you're gonna get into business, it's just like provide something that people can't live without, and people you'll cut you a lot of fucking breaks, man. Like it's unfortunate, but it's like, it's like if you want some job security, it's like, hey, where else? How are you gonna fly?
Like, where are you gonna go? Where are you gonna go, motherfucker? That's why I'm going on one of these planes, because it's like, you're gonna get to Mexico somehow, bitch. What are you gonna do?
I'm gonna start a service just shooting people out of giant fucking cannons. So, after a round of successful test flights, the Federal Aviation Administration issued the 737 a certificate of airworthiness again. It fixed the kinks, and soon became one of the best-selling and most popular aircraft in the world. However, as the decades passed and Boeing made several tweaks to its design, it largely ignored the old steering system it had lifted from the 727 during its Frankenstein-esque design process. But it would soon need to do something differently, because now they finally had some competition. And this is where everything starts to move a little faster, where Boeing is now on the back foot and they're having to keep up. Are you familiar with the Airbus A320, Kath?
I am. I'm a loyal JetBlue customer, and that's what they fly. They don't fly Boeings.
Yeah. There's
stick with that JetBlue, baby.
Yeah, man. There's a wildly. It was actually a very regular commercial, but it was when I lived in Germany, we had German television and shit, and there was a British commercial. But the joke was that this guy was getting he was an airline pilot, and he's getting some dental work done, and the dentist is like, so you work for Lufthansa, tell me about what their fleet. And he's like, oh my God, and he's got all the things, but it has it in subtitles. And he was mentioning how many Airbuses they have. That was my first exposure to them. So Airbus A320. At the time of the 1996 ruling, Boeing had spent nearly a decade fighting the upstart European multinational corporation Airbus and their competing model, the Airbus A320. The A320 was newer and had a superior modern control system. Airbus had wire steering that sent electric signals from a joystick to control surfaces such as rudders and flaps. So now we're into like what you would think in modern day and age what it would be like. It's like playing with a joystick.
Right.
It sends electrical signals, and there's a whole little powerhouse that moves all the little shit based off the signals that it gets. Right.
It goes from being like a pinball machine to a video game.
Exactly. Goddamn, Kath. That's exactly what it is. Right? So, with its increase, because of this, the rudder, everything it required way less material. It was way lighter, used less fuel, which led to increased fuel efficiency and bigger cabin space and lower maintenance costs. So, because of all this, the Airbus A320 began to gain on Boeing's market share. Boeing needed to make a move. There was talk at Boeing of a completely new plane designed from the ground up to compete with the Airbus A320, and this seemed like a good idea until you factored in a few things. The release of a brand new airplane meant that airlines would have to retrain their pilots to fly the new model, and that when you're selling airplanes is something you have to consider into your cost rollout. So,
totally. Yeah.
It was like, so it was insanely, they said it was something like, and I guess there might be like an expectation for Boeing to pay for this, like is one of the things. Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. Like, I guess I never thought about that, but it makes sense. I mean, I knew there were different sort of levels of pilot license, like being a commercial pilot is different than being, like somebody who does like Civil Air Patrol or something. Like those are different things. But I guess it never occurred to me that you would probably have to be certified on different specific planes because they are flown differently and have different controls and things like that. Like, I guess I never thought about that. But yeah, I'd imagine that if you were going to buy like the deals that they have with these airlines, in order to make this cost effective for them, they would probably have to subsidize the training of the pilots and stuff like that.
Yeah, because it'd be one of those things of like, oh, we don't want to buy your plane out to retrain my pilots. We'll pay for the retraining.
Right,
and it probably, I can't imagine how much one of these things costs, but that's probably well worth it for them. Or in some instances, at this point, they're playing catch up. It could be. It wasn't because they were saying essentially on just the training costs alone, because also you have to factor in while that pilot is training, they can't fly.
They can't
fly.
So
so it's like a whole thing.
Rotate people out and
so the cost of training was looking to be at $1 million per plane sold, and they had the initial pre-orders were for 130, and that's great. That's $130 million. That's more money than most companies will see in their entire existence, and they're expecting to do this on one aspect of one product rollout. And like, I don't want to sit here and be like, I get it, but it's like, I've never been faced with a number that big and been told like, hey, make it work. You know what I'm saying? And like, I could understand the stresses that they're under, which I would say is why that system needs to be rethought of from the ground up. But these guys are like, hey, we can't afford this. So, these guys are smart. They know what they're doing. So they were like, also an entire new model of plane meant an entirely new testing and approval period with the FAA. So that means you can't even make your money back for now, probably 7 or 8 years. And that's
an interesting problem too that I never thought about, is sort of the ship of Theseus thing where like, how much can you change the plane before you need to recertify?
Oh, we're going to test the credulity of this.
Yeah, I bet that's why they're having all these problems. So,
so with the Airbus A320 dominating the game, they simply didn't have the time or resources for any of this. This reminds me of the Kendrick and Drake beef. Kendrick was just dropping track after track after track to when Drake finally replied, he had to be on the defensive, and it just threw his whole fucking... I think threw his game off. Also, I just think Kendrick is just a much better rapper. But
sure, that's the course. But
make your enemy react to you. You know what I'm saying? Make them have to react to you, or else,
make them try to deny that they're a pedophile. It's not going to sound good. There's not a good way to do that. Yeah.
I love he's like, you're a pedophile. He's like, you're short. I was like, all right, well, I mean, both very valid points, So what they were going for, and then also what elevated this even more is that while they're in this planning process of figuring out how they're going to respond to Airbus A320, Airbus A320 goes ahead and drops Not Like Us. And they come out with the A320neo, the new engine option, which was even 20% more fuel efficient than the model that was already more fuel efficient than the 737. So they're just
killing them.
Yeah, and Airbus is like a European company. I just imagine they're just Euro track suited out like, ha ha ha, we are all up in your grill, Boeing. They're just super bummed about it. So
they're definitely calling them Boeing to make them mad.
Yeah. Hey, I talked to your father, Wilhelm Boeing. It was funny. What I didn't get into this because there's a lot of like. Again, there is several stories. There's several episodes worth of several different series of podcasts in here. But in the 90s, Boeing merged with McDonnell Douglas, and many industry insiders point this as when this was when it stopped worrying about let's make really good planes and it was like let's make shareholder returns, and that was the moment that they think that most would say it happened, because what happened out of that was that they left the Puget Sound. They were like a Washington, Seattle based company their whole existence. They left Puget Sound, moved to Chicago, and then eventually moved to Virginia, and so the CEOs were literally as far away as you can be and still be in the United States, away from the production. They had they weren't a company that made airplanes. They weren't walking the
floor or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't a company that made airplanes. They were a company that made money, and that was what the change was. And so now I'm just thinking of the Airbus guys pulling up to Puget Sound and Everett, Washington, and being like, "We went to your hood, dog. No one knew you. I was on your block, bro. You weren't there." So they're like, "All right." They're like, "We need something," and they just said, instead of being like, "Hey guys, maybe we're just not going to have growth for a few years." That's not an option. That's not that you can't do that these days.
No,
and that's not to like take the blame off them. It's just saying that simply is this is not an option. That doesn't even occur to anyone. They're like, let's just play it cool.
Only.
Yeah. So they decided to drop the 737 MAX. Now, it was hoped that the project would achieve a 4% reduction in fuel burn rate compared to the A320, which is good. But the new aircraft would also offer airline fleets that already operate the 737 the benefit of not needing significant crew craning. To decrease drag, the 737 receives split wingtips. You may have seen these before. They're the ones where here's the wing and it kind of like Batman's out like that on the edges. Yeah. So they gave them that. But this was found in testing to significantly change the aircraft's aerodynamic properties by causing a...
Yeah, you'd think.
Yeah.
It's a big thing sticking out of the wing.
Yeah, you ever made a paper airplane and folded it just so goofy one time? And it's like how did this not occur to all of y'all? So, but what did occur to them? And this is how, because this would cause a nose-up situation.
But they've kept the steering the same. Yeah,
it's still the same steering. Yes.
Okay, it's
still the same steering system.
Got
it. And this one causes now when it fucks up, it causes a nose up situation.
Nose up. Okay.
Yeah, which like when your manager's
maybe a little better.
Yeah, when your manager's like, "Hey, your drawer being short is just your drawer being over is just as bad as your drawer being short." You're like, "Well, it's not, but okay."
Yeah, precisely. This is your drawer being over.
Yeah. It's a nose up situation. So. They introduced a system in the software of the plane called the MCAS, the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System. And this would use software to engage the horizontal stabilizers. In the case of the MAX, this would be used to account for the nose-up situation caused by the new engines and thus bring the nose back down. So we'll put a pin in the MCAS for a moment, but because the new airplane was already a certified airframe, development was greatly reduced, along with reduced red tape that a whole new design would attract. Reportedly, by November of 2011, Boeing had amassed 700 commitments. 4 years after the program launched in August 2015, the first fuselage rolled off the production line. The first flight took place January 29, 2016 at Renton Municipal Airport. Shout out Renton, Washington. I have played a ton of shows there. Nothing out of the ordinary had been reported, and a year later, the aircraft received its FAA license in March, followed soon by the remaining worldwide licenses. Now, as orders started to stack up, carriers had to prepare their crews in the operation of the new aircraft. Traditionally, for brand new planes, several hours of simulator time is needed. That costs money, firstly, in actually purchasing a simulator or updating the sims that the company already had. Well, with the 737 MAX, and due to its sharing type rating with the 737 previous model, and because of the MCAS, the system that reached out the plane, pilots only needed to take a tablet-based training course.
Oh, brother.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be. That's like less than you have to do to get like certified to tend bar.
Yeah.
You shouldn't just have to do something on an iPad.
Yeah.
That's not enough.
I made the beat.
Babies use iPads.
Yeah. I made the beat for this podcast on an iPad.
Right.
It should not be used for anything seriously ever.
No, it's for children to watch Cocomelon so they don't cry on the subway. That's what iPads are for. They're not for teaching pilots.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Absolutely not.
Not at all. Years when I was on the road, as you patiently recall I had an iPad. You're like, just get a fucking laptop. And I was like, I want to exist in a world where I can do everything on this iPad, which isn't possible. So, because, strangely but deliberately. Now, here's where we talk about a scam. The MCAS was omitted from the 737 MAX's manual. They didn't say that this thing existed because then it'd be like, hey, wait a minute, wait, what? You have a whole new navigational system? Why do you need a whole new navigational system? Oh, because the plane is essentially fucking a completely different plane that you haven't tested yet. So they were just like, well, what if
How are people supposed to use it? Or was it just built in? And so
it was built in.
About it?
And whenever there would be a sensor saying, I'm not going to say a nose up situation, just a sensor saying there's a nose up situation, this plane would immediately, the MCAS would kick in. It would not tell the pilots it was doing it. And because of that, it would confuse the shit out of them. Because these guys fly planes all the time. They're like, wait, whoa, what's going on here? And now the plane is hurtling towards the ground, which is the opposite of where you want to go in a plane. And
definitely.
Yeah. I'm thinking sky, baby, the whole time. Call me crazy. Up, and away. That's where I want to go. I don't want to land until I get to Toledo, wherever the fuck I'm going. So, now back to this, and again, this was done to just keep down costs. And so this is how the MCA system worked. Basically, the MCAS was not a new system when it was used in the MAX. Boeing had been using it in its military tanker variant, the 767, since 2013. And in that little magical corporate, of storytelling, it was like, well, the plane isn't new. We're using a steering system that's not new. Nothing's new here. Nothing. Why do we need to tell you about it? Nothing to see here. Yeah.
Irrelevant.
So
next question.
It would it would avoid a stall by manipulating the horizontal stabilizers, but it was employed in the Boeing KC-46 Pegasus to help balance the plane during midair fueling. But in the 737 MAX, its sole purpose was to make the plane feel like its predecessor because the new bigger engines are placed further forward than the previous engines. The system was only active when the MAX was under manual control. It was given to the software of the plane control system complete authority to bring the aircraft nose down when it detected a potential stall.
Yeah, that can't be a surprise to them.
Yeah,
you gotta let them fucking know. That's not.
Well, pilots generally. They're smart guys. You know what I'm saying? Like this,
sure.
Yeah, shout out to pilots. I am very thankful for you guys. And these two pilots were like, hey, we're noticing a weird thing happening. And if, from what we know, it seems like you guys have put a control in this plane system and told no one about it. And Boeing basically, it said, through these two pilots concealed this information, which sounds a lot like they paid them the fuck off, totally. Yeah. And so the FAA, the changes weren't added to flight manuals, thus limiting the perceived effect of the system on the operation of the aircraft, hiding the severity of the MCAS from pilots. This in turn allowed Boeing to advertise the aircraft as not needing significant retraining. So, but here's the problem, is that if there's a problem with the sensors that are telling you that, if those malfunction, this thing's taken over, it's going down, you can't fix it. And that, unfortunately, we're going to get into another cluster of plane crashes here, and this is the one that really lands us right in the predicament that we're at, or the situation that we're in with Boeing. So, October 29th, 2018, the Lion Air Flight 610 is flying out of Jakarta, Indonesia. Lion Air is a Indonesian airline. The captain, Bavier Suneja, has over 5,000 hours of flight experience on the 737. The aircraft is also relatively new. It's only had 500 hours of flight, that particular craft. The plane departs the runway at 6:20 a.m. 3 seconds into the flight, the stick begins to shake, and the plane thinks it's about to stall. The MCAS takes over, and despite the pilot's repeated attempt to gain control of the aircraft, the plane crashes. 11 minutes in, it kills all 189 people on board. Just a huge loss of life. Yeah. Indonesia grounds all 737 MAXs in its fleet, and an inspection determines that there was a difference in the calibration between the left and right AOA, or angle of attack sensors. These incorrect readings led to the plane to think it was stalling, which led to the override of the MCAS and the total shutout of the pilot's commands, thusly driving the plane into the ground. Meanwhile, all of this was happening without Boeing ever notifying the FAA of the MCAS.
Yeah. Shady shit, man.
Yeah, shady shit. So, tragedy would strike again, not, 5 months later? March 10th, 2019, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 which was a 737 MAX, was flying from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia to Nairobi, Kenya. The pilot was named Yera Gedashu, and he had over 8,000 flight hours. His co-pilot was less experienced. They only had 361 hours, but 8,000 flight hours, the guy knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
Almost immediately, AOA sensors indicated a nose-down incident, and MCAS engaged and overrode the pilot's command. In just 6 minutes after takeoff, the airplane slammed to the ground going 700 miles an hour.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
So, airlines across the globe began grounding the 737 MAX, and eventually multiple committees and hearings were assembled to assess what had gone wrong. And this is where Boeing just does the disgusting company stuff. They are able to get a guy named Sam Graves of Missouri. He's a ranking member of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. And he said, pilots trained in the United States would have successfully been able to handle the emergencies on both jets.
Fuck you. Fuck off.
Yeah.
What a fucking
Fucking
asshole.
eat a dick, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shut up, man.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I'm sure then this happens on American flights, and it's like, well, what do you fucking say now, asshole?
Yeah, exactly. Well, what's funny is that all the time the simulation is ran, then he finished up his quote, that it compounds my concerns about quality training standards in other countries, which is just the most like sanitized way of being like, compounds my concerns about quality training standards in other countries, but which I've been telling y'all for the longest time, these places are fucking weird, dude. Like,
right. Yeah. It's like, no, my company didn't cause something because racism did, or because my racism is the solution to this.
Exactly. So but however, everything, and then they went on to quote materials that were all paid for by institutional investors with large holdings in Boeing stock. But what's wild is he said that if pilots trained in America would have been able to solve this. The simulator runs using the report indicate that one of the only ways the aircraft was able to be like saved in this thing that they were able to come through was using a technique called the roller coaster method, i.e. letting the yoke go to relieve the forces on the tail, then cranking the wheel up and repeating this many times and eventually stabilizing the plane.
That sounds like something you would not instinctively do.
Yeah. Well, also, that technique hasn't been used in U.S. pilot manuals for decades, and it's actually something you find in foreign flight manuals.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like, American pilots actually statistically are at a disadvantage to fucking fixing your problem.
Yeah.
So pardon me. In October of 2019, Boeing Company President and Chief Executive Officer Dennis Muhlenberg testified before a Senate Transportation Committee hearing on the aviation safety and the future of Boeing 737 MAX. He was grilled with questions about internal messages that had raised concerns over the MCAS issue of a single failed sensor. During the committee, it was highlighted that in the contract with Southwest Airlines, the largest 737 MAX operator, that Boeing would be required to pay the airline $1 million per aircraft delivered if pilots needed to undertake simulator training. Clearly something Boeing would not have liked to have done, thus giving a reason to downplay the MCAS situation. However, Muhlenberg said...
This is just like a weird piece of irony, but so MCAS, when I hear that acronym, I think of mast cell activation syndrome, which is an autoimmune disorder that just has the same acronym as this.
Yeah.
But like what MCAS does is sort of just like randomly cause immune system responses. Like your body will just start attacking itself, and it's both MCAS systems, like they do the same thing. Like they just override what you want it to do and tries to fix a problem that isn't there.
Yeah,
that's what mast cell activation syndrome is. It's like, damn, they really named these things appropriately.
Yeah, it's a cursed acronym, is what it is. Just no more of that acronym.
Mm-hmm.
So this sucks. The dude Muhlenberg. This is what he had to say about the whole ordeal that killed several hundred people. He goes, well, we tried to rely on the previous architecture, which was a one sensor architecture, and we learned. Now we're moving to a two sensor architecture. So
okay.
Yeah.
Lesson learned, I guess.
Yeah. He received a $15 million bonus that year.
Of course he
just
did.
bears mentioning.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
One senator did call him out. Representative Daniel Lipinski of Illinois said, I'm not sure what accountability means if you received a $15 million bonus after these planes crashed, which very solid point. Now, Muhlenberg denied any knowledge of internal messages, but it wasn't a good look. But how did Boeing manage to get this new potentially deadly feature past the FAA? Well, it turns out in December 2018, Boeing, in a Boeing slideshow, the company set out how it felt that MCAS didn't need to individually, be assessed by the FAA. And essentially the FAA gave them the ability to certify the aircraft. So the FAA allowed them to certify it. They self-certified it, and the FAA
love when they do that. When we investigated ourselves and we found that this is okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like this is a instance of like regulatory capture where like the people working at the FAA probably used to work at the airlines.
Yep.
Or they want to get jobs at the airlines after they're at the FAA. Like
so they play
it's
ball.
Just too polluted. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So basically, they said there was a joint failure between the FAA and Boeing. And they set out 4 required improvements for the MAX before it could be ungrounded. 1, install new flight control computer software. Then they said also, they had 2 AOA sensors. They had 2 of those things. And they also had to change the routing of horizontal stabilizer trim wires. This intended to bring the airplane into full compliance with the FAA's wire separation safety standards. In addition to these 4 design changes, the FAA will also require operators to conduct an AOA sensor system test and perform an operational readiness flight prior to returning each airplane. So officially, they just got to check them all out. So that is the story. We're going to start kind of ramping things down. It brings us to 2024, which has been a wild fucking year for Boeing. I can only imagine just I don't feel sorry for these guys, but just like the stress of that must be going on in that office right now. January 2024, the door plug blowout. On January 5th, an Alaska Airlines Boeing 737 MAX 9 saw its plugged emergency exit door fly off mid-flight, leaving a gaping hole in the plane's fuselage while it was at an altitude of nearly 16,000 feet. The next day, the FAA ordered all Boeing 737 MAX 9 planes in the U.S. territory to be temporarily grounded. Passengers from the Alaska Airlines flight filed a lawsuit against Boeing. In March, Boeing denied legal responsibility and argued that the suit should be dismissed.
How?
Yeah.
How on earth?
Yeah, right.
Whose fault was it then? Did the intrusive thoughts win and somebody went and grabbed the handle? Like, come on, man, the door flew off. I don't know how it's
who else would be to blame here? So then they had in February 2024, Boeing announced that some 50 undelivered 737 MAX jets would be reworked after misdrilled holes were identified on some fuselages.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so then we come to the whistleblowers. Now this is a complicated part because I think it was best summarized by a tweet or meme that I saw where it said, man, if I had a nickel for every time a Boeing whistleblower died under mysterious circumstances, I'd only have 10 cents, but it's weird that it happened twice.
Yeah, precisely. Very strange.
And so this way, I just for respect to these people, I do want to mention them, but I also don't want to be the one here saying like Boeing killed these guys because we don't know that. One of the guys died.
This is a big heavy on the allegedly.
Yeah, heavy on the allegedly. Also, one of the guys died of a bacterial infection. I just don't feel I don't think that's how Boeing would get down. But whistleblowers. John Swampy Barnett, a former Boeing employee known for raising concerns about the firm's production standards, was found dead in the U.S. John Barnett worked for Boeing for more than 30 years before retiring in 2017. In the days before his death, he had been giving evidence in a whistleblower lawsuit against the company. Boeing said it was saddened to hear of Mr. Barnett's passing. The Charleston County coroner confirmed his death to the BBC on Monday and said the 62-year-old had died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound on the 9th of March. Henry Zabrowski from the last podcast on the left was talking about this, and he was like, I mean, it's stressful. He's like testifying against Boeing.
It is stressful to be a whistleblower. It is stressful. They don't make it easy on you. Yeah. But yeah,
the second one,
wild.
The second one was Josh Dean. Was that?
What was he whistleblowing about?
He was the one that said that
parts
that basically he said that profit had been prioritized over safety for almost the last 2 decades, and that he said under his watch, or not under his watch, but in his estimation, there hadn't been a single plane roll out of the construction hangars that was really at the level of quality that Boeing used to enforce.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and so Joshua Dean was a former quality auditor at a key Boeing supplier who raised concerns about improperly drilled holes. He was that guy.
Okay.
Dean, 45, had died. His family announced on social media. His family told NPR that Dean had fallen quickly into critical condition after being diagnosed with MRSA, a bacterial infection. He was airlifted to a hospital in Wichita, Kansas, and to another facility in Oklahoma City, but medical teams were unable to save his life. So 2 very tragic events. What they have led Boeing to do, which is just kind of just that goofy, shallow fucking corporate thing, is now 10 more whistleblowers have come through, and Boeing is like celebrating them. They're like, yeah, yay, we love
heroes. Yeah.
They're banging fucking pots and pans together for him.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
We definitely don't want to kill you.
We love our whistleblowers. I'm going to take a picture of you using this very long scope of this camera right here.
Yeah, no. The red laser is just my new Android guy.
So that is the very tragic story of Boeing, and just it's utter failure. And it's like we've done so many of these episodes recently, and I think they're all uniquely interesting and captivating, but they all have that common thread of just like, fuck it, man, we'll figure it out. Just give us the money.
Yeah.
And then we got to keep making the money because this whole thing is that this is going to keep making money. It's going to keep making more money. And we're literally structuring our entire society based off the idea and the belief that everything's going to keep making more money. And like, fuck, man, like it's like I'm not an economist. I'm pretty sure you guys have put that together by now. But like, I'm also not a CEO. But like, I don't know. It's just, it's bizarre. Like I tried to use my roommate's treadmill yesterday and gave up there for 45 minutes because they wanted me to like create an account and sign up for a free trial. And then like I had to have an email on my phone. I'm sitting here trying to email a fucking treadmill. And I was like, I'll just walk around the block.
Yeah,
Screw it.
Fuck this.
Yeah. It's like everything is so crazy. And I just feel like this is just indicative it's the same problem from the treadmill to groceries.
We need to keep adding things.
We have to keep adding things.
Innovating and disrupting. And it's like, maybe things are okay how they are. And that's why that's why they were the way they were, because they worked.
I was paying $20 a month. I pay $20 a month right now on editing software for this podcast. Like editing software that I could, 5 years ago, I could have just bought the editing software, and that's not even thinkable. They're like, idiot, why would we just sell you something? It's a subscription-based service, and it's like, I feel like I'm an old man yelling at a cloud. Maybe this is my old man moment, but shit, man, like this can't go on. It's unsustainable. How does no one else see this?
Yeah, I mean, it is just like this. It's because it's this concept of just like, you need to constantly be having new ideas about things. And if you're like making a product or something, it's like you always have to be innovating because that's how growth happens.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but it's also how you like make things shittier too.
Yeah.
Like you twist too many times, it twists off. Like you can't just keep adding and adding and adding and adding.
Yeah, man.
It is really strange. And it's like, it's scary. I mean, it's the same thing with like the Cybertruck, right? Where it's like, it's one thing to do this when it's like apps. It's another thing if you're quote moving fast and breaking things, people are dying.
Yeah.
Like you can't cut corners with that. You can make a shitty, like if Grubhub crashes, it's okay.
Yeah.
But you can't make an airplane this way.
Yeah. I don't like, I can already hear one of my old construction bosses being like, competition breeds innovation, but I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't necessarily know if I want airplane companies competing with each other. It feels, it seems weird, or at least not to the degree they had to do that each of these companies felt compelled to do. Meanwhile, that's...
or it needs to be like, there needs to be way more. I mean, it's a thing we come up against in this podcast all the time too, is like competition does help breed innovation. Like we're talking about the Airbus, but there needs to be more regulation.
Yeah.
Like that's... So much of these things that we talk about could just be solved if the regulation wasn't either like subject to regulatory capture or just like not stringent because it's so ridiculously pro-business that they put like no limitations on what people are allowed to do to cut costs. Like there needs to be better regulation for if you're going to have competition like this. You just need the regulators to be better.
Yeah, it's sad, man, and I don't... think like it's one of these things where like I don't feel like we're gonna be like look back at this time period and go, oh, that was crazy. That was when all these companies were acting out of pocket. Luckily, we reined that in. I feel this is gonna come to a very bad end, and it's just gonna be. And we're starting to see the cracks of it. I think it's gonna be broad.
Yeah, check back in October and see if my the Boeing I took to Mexico.
The fucking check back in for the R.I.P. Kath episode.
Yeah, we'll see. Knock on wood.
I'm gonna start off with that Sarah McLachlan song. But yeah, no, I feel like and again, I'm just getting older. Maybe I'm just losing my mind, but it's like I just see like broad systemic catastrophic failure in the future, and quality of life taking a fucking nosedive. And man, well, I just
end on a high note, I guess.
Yeah, right.
End the podcast on a real positive note there, Pat.
Yeah, well, here's one thing I will say is don't cancel your Patreon subscription in the face of a declining society. You're going to want to keep that going because we do 2 more episodes every month at patreon.com.
It's true. We also have ad-free versions of these episodes.
Ad-free versions of these episodes. You see what ads do? They just empower these assholes. All right? Give the money to us and live in an ad-free environment.
Exactly.
Oh, man. Yeah, sorry. Let's see. High note. There isn't one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Kath, do you have anything coming up you want to tell people about?
June 7th is the next paid protest. I also am doing a show at Sunshine Laundromat a week from this Sunday. So come to that. That's in Greenpoint. It's a secret speakeasy bar behind the laundromat.
Ooh, hell yeah.
What about you?
I got some stuff coming up. I think I'm doing Stone vs. Drunk vs. Sober on the 26th here in Austin, Texas. And then I'm headlining Hanover's in Pflugerville on the 21st. I don't know if this will be out by then. But, oh, no, it will be. It'll be out Thursday.
It's coming out in 2 days.
Yeah, the 21st. Yeah. Buy your plane ticket. Fly on down to Pflugerville, Texas. But, I got some other cool stuff coming up later, but it's a little far out, so I'll let you guys know. Kath, thanks for, being here.
Thanks for listening to your story.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me go on just a wildly anti-capitalist rant there for a few minutes. I appreciate that. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Like I said, you can follow us on all the socials. We are at Lie, Cheat, Steal Podcast on TikTok, Instagram, and on YouTube. If you haven't already, please follow us on one of those. It really helps us out quite a bit. Also, whatever you are listening to us on, please give us a 5-star rating and leave a review. That would really help us out as well. But aside from that, guys, thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. And remember, be safe, be smart, but above all, don't get caught.
Don't get caught. See you next time.